The trip to the Guajira region was made by us with the intention of having a pedagogic field trip in order to get to know more about the cultures and the environment that is present in this region. Um, we stayed both in rainforest places such as the Tayrona Park and rancherias, which are indigenous settlements of the Wayuu culture. The Wayuu culture established their uh, their space throughout clans that are present in different regions of the Guajira. And within these clans, each family has its own rancheria, which is where we stayed and where we gathered most of the information that we're going to present in this video. The knowledge issue that is going to be approached by us is that of the society and the relation it has with each individual. And in light of the clash with the Western education, with the Wayuu culture, we will we will try to answer up to what extent are the each of the communities an open-minded community. That is to say, our community and the Wayuu community.
We would abord such issues from an anthropological perspective. Man creates culture, a system of symbols to compensate his biological inferiority towards other beings. Therefore, it's biocultural. His existence depends on both a biological and a cultural aspect. The second one relies on a system of symbols created through an individual perception of reality. There is a particular dynamic in the obtention of such perception. The subject receives a sensible impression from a cognitional object, the world, and makes a symbolic interpretation of them to which he or she calls reality. Therefore, it could be said that reality is different for people or groups of people, depending on their symbolic structure they construct around such impressions. Lineage set the basis of social structure in the Wayuu community. Every individual develops an important paper in society. In this way, such lineage and structures maintain through generations. For example, the word keeper or puchitpu is the maximum authority in the entire community, while the maternal uncle develops this paper inside the family nucleus. It is himself and the children mom who are in charge of transmitting culture, that is to say, the symbolic structure through education. And it's when the individual creates its own interpretation of reality. According to Kant, there is nothing more spiritual than education because it influences in the way in which the individual receives and transforms culture.
Um, since the times of the colony, back in the 15th and 16th century, uh, the Europeans brought their education with them in order to civilize the indigenous communities of these regions. The, Thus, we can argue that the first form of education that the Wayuu community received from the Western world was that of religious education, such as the Jesuits and the Franciscans, which established their schools in this country. Throughout the history of the nation, certain political parties have came to the conclusion that education linked with religion is not a viable thing. Thus, education became public and non-religious. The education that nowadays the indigenous communities of Colombia receive is an education controlled by the state, which covers the areas of knowledge basic for the development in the capitalist world. That is, mathematics, English, human studies, physical education, and all sort of different subjects that are controlled by the National Ministry for Education. Moreover, this education is the way that the Wayuus have opened themselves to the Western society. Since the times of the colony, while they embraced the evangelicalists who came to colonize the space, yet in the community the attitude toward these evangelicalists is that of rejection due to the fact that they attempt to change the whole basis of the culture of the Wayus and to implement the Christian vision of life, which is to the Wayus an offense. Nonetheless, we have been told that there are churches present in some of the rancherias in the whole Guajira, especially in the highlands of the Guajira, where the dogs are and the evangelicalists had more presence. Nowadays, the way they open themselves is allowing more and more of the people in the community to attend middle and superior education, mostly the women, but nonetheless, the children, all of the children in the rancherias we visited, attended school. And the interesting thing about this is the fact that they also keep the home education of how to manage themselves within their community. An example, perhaps they have taken, or the thing they have, the reason they have done this, is because if a person loses within their community the whole knowledge of how to grow in that community, he becomes useless to that community. So if they go to learn the Western manners, then they can't live anymore in their indigenous community because of the fact that they don't have the knowledge to develop themselves as useful to that community. It is interesting the fact that they have both worlds joined within themselves. And this is an exposition of how, up to what extent, they are open minded. Perhaps the most prominent difference between the Western society and the Wayuu society is the expression of individualism that can be appreciated in each of them. In the Wayuu society, individualism is virtually non existent due to the fact that they function with the society existence in their minds, not their own. While in the Western way of life, the individual seeks to benefit himself before benefiting others. This shows that the radical difference that there is between our society and the Western society, and how committed they are to their own environment. And this is because of the certain amount of pressure that the same group of people in the Wayuu society impose upon the, the youngsters who have become into contact with the Western society in order for them to keep alive their culture and their way of living, which they have found it is more profitable for them. So we could argue that they have an interest for applying this amount of pressure. Yet it seems it is inherent to them to be acceptant and open-minded towards other communities.
According to what was said before about the lineage setting the basis of social structure in the Wayo community, we can conclude that the spiritual dimension of the individual, through education and transmission of culture, determines the lifestyle of the Wayo community, due to the fact that its axiology revolves around its belief. The individual obeys firmly to their culture and the symbology implied. According to what was said before about the lineage setting the basis of social structure in a Wayo community, we can conclude that the spiritual dimension of the individual, through education and transmission of culture, determine the lifestyle of the Wayo community, due to the fact that its axiology revolves around its beliefs and the individual obeys firmly to the culture and the symbology implied. Then, the individual has a very profound connection with the community in the Wayo culture, up to the extent that he surrenders a part of his individualism in order to keep his culture alive. Hence, the Wayo society is open-minded, yet they are obstinate when preserving their culture and traditions. The following interviews are evidence of the Wayu's contemporary lifestyles and the way they have opened their culture to the Occidental through education.